Good evening, everyone. My name is Zaria Blue Hardy. I'm doing my critical research essay on the consequences of the ethics of Jim Crow. So, this is based on The Ethics of Living Jim Crow by Richard Wright, which we read in our textbooks. This essay was inspired by the perspective it provided and how the ethics of Jim Crow are lethal. But I zero in specifically on how it pertains to the topic of the holistic health of Black people. It poisons the mind, body, and soul. It also casts a darkness over the Black family dynamic because it deeply affects the Black family dynamic because of how it affects each member individually and triggers some sort of chain reaction and trickle effect that can be felt throughout generations. My thesis statement at the bottom, which will be on the next couple of slides, just so that it can always be tied back in to what's on the screen, is below. The consequences of Jim Crow were directly responsible for the unsung subjugation, and neglect of Black bodies and the detrimental effects of it on Black health and wellness. So, to begin, Jim Crow was a set of laws created to sustain white supremacy and nurture white fragility. I acknowledge modern references throughout the essay because acknowledging the residual consequences of how Black people move through modern day society is a relevant testament to how severe the impact of Jim Crow was and is. And you see in this picture, you can see what the overall effects of racism are on health. You can even see here poor sleep, cardiovascular disease, higher BMI, and obesity. BMI, that's a whole another story within itself. Inflammation, psychiatric disorders, coronary heart disease, high blood pressure, stress, and hormone deregulation. And you can see as a disclaimer or just something to take note of. Each of these images is from the Digital Archive of the Health and Wellness Organization. So this isn't just somebody talking. This isn't just something that was thrown together. This is something that was put together by people who are specialized in the topics that are being discussed. Effects on Black people in the healthcare system. And I really want us to pay special attention to this picture. 27% experience racism while scheduling an appointment, 23% while leaving the appointment, on the follow-up call, checking in for the appointment, during the appointment. You see the statistics. So here I talk about, and this is a part of my essay, I talk about eugenics, Black genocide, and the true beginnings of Planned Parenthood, which, if you're familiar, goes hand in hand with eugenics. Planned Parenthood was previously known as the American Birth Control League, which was born from the philosophies, values, and mission of eugenics. Their mission was basically to commit a subtle genocide of the African American population that was dragged to America by their necks because they were deemed unfit to be a part of American society. Positive eugenics, negative eugenics, mass sterilizations, eugenics, and everyone associated with it had a common goal: a legal holocaust to eradicate Black people. The more I learn about African American history and the people who are insistent on changing it, erasing it, or silencing those who teach it, the more I see that it was never really about hate. It was never about sharing God with the afflicted. It was about money. Money may not be the root of all evil, but is the root of some of the greatest evils. It was always about greed and control, politics and power, ignorance and arrogance. I also talk in this section of my essay about redlining and how it is a practice that systematically approves or denies an individual's ability to access resources, most of which are usually needed to thrive. It is tied into racism and used to uphold things such as Jim Crow, Black Code, and slavery. Was used, yes. There are studies examining the quality of life in relations to health of people in redline communities. This research is helpful when evaluating claims that systemic injustices cause problems that can be passed down through generations because of poor health care. And this part is really important, all of this. And I think another part that's important to note that I did not put on the presentation is that a lot of studies that were done, and I'm not talking about eugenics, I'm talking about the curriculum that we have, and this is something I'll touch on later, is a lot of it is based on how things look in the bodies, on the skin of white people. These tests, medical trials and studies are done on white skin, on white bodies, and we know, for those who may know, there are many things medically, genetically, biologically that affect us differently. So it is important to have black bodies, to have black people a part of this medical research, like to be a part of this medical research. And not enough of that is being done or has been done. And that's another thing that I touch on in my essay. Effects on mental health. This is a big one. In this essay, we will not neglect, I say this in my essay, we will not neglect mental health as a pillar of holistic being. There are various mental manifestations of the psychological damage caused by the vice of racism. One of such, which is understood through a broader approach, is mentioned later in the essay, black fatigue, which is a disheartening disease of a reality that demoralizes its hosts. Jim Crow was inspired by the vile intentions that embrace racism and can be linked back to black people seeing themselves in an inferior light. For example, the black doll, white doll test they did with children. Many people know about this, so I can't remember the name of it, but I really hope you understand what I'm saying. How one sees themselves is a vital aspect of one's foundation, the foundations of one's mind. It controls how one thinks, decides, feels, and therefore moves in the world. You know how disheartening it was for the seeing that test that people did with the experiment that they did with the children and the dolls, and say, oh, which doll is more beautiful, which doll is more trouble, like stuff like that, and seeing how the black children responded, and therefore it's to really get a glimpse into how they see themselves because of the society they live in. Yeah. Oh, I also want to mention these right here, this picture, the impact of racism on mental health. This decreased trust, increased survival mode. I know many can relate. Increased risk of depression and anxiety, second guessing things, second guessing yourself. Let me add that in there. Decreased hope, panic, existential questioning. Feelings of powerlessness. Feelings of powerlessness can also go hand in hand with feelings of worthlessness, which is something that I kind of touched on and grazed on when I spoke about the project with the kids and the babies. Conclusion. Like I once told someone after sharing with them my desire to be a dermatologist, the problem isn't really that we don't have enough black dermatologists. The problem is that there isn't enough information being shared about black skin. We need more studies and research being invested in and done on the topic. This isn't an outcry for more black dermatologists. This is an outcry for a revision of curriculum. It doesn't matter how many people you have on your side. Like if you're fighting a war, doesn't matter how many people you have on your side of the war. If the majority of the people don't know how to fight, the problem is less of we don't have enough people who know the problem, and more of we don't have enough people who are like giving we don't have enough people who are sustainable solution oriented. The ratio of people who are aware that the system is unjust to people who are offering viable solutions is demoralizing. Now here is topic research. things I do well with. Creating my thesis statement, which I don't usually do well with, but this one I have a little fun with it. Articulating variations of my research questions well to access relevant information. I was able to, I really pulled out my thesaurus for this type of thing and was just finding different ways to plug and chug to get different results and get broader options, find relevant information. Yeah. Analyzing the text and using context to connect information in separate sources, which is what I kind of what I just touched on. I did struggle with procrastination quite a bit. Making clear connections with the information gathered with modern day examples. And even though I did kind of struggle with that, like connecting it with modern day examples, I really had to dig deep and like really get into it and do the work. Like not just, I realized I had to go like beyond journal article and really get off my computer and get off my butt and do something. And so I was like, I'm gonna go to the library. So that's what I did, looking for modern connections and searching modern connections. And I found this. Black fatigue. If you remember earlier, when I introduced introducing my topic, I mentioned a little bit of this. Black fatigue talks more in detail about racism being a public health crisis. It expands on how racism erodes the mind, body, and spirit, like a flesh-eating disease working from the inside out. That is all I have for now. More to come in my paper. I think even making this presentation has, even though I'm still in the process of writing it, it's going well. But making this presentation has really given me a more clear outline of what I want to share and what I want to learn and analyze. And honestly, doing this topic has radicalized me in a way and really made me want to take action. And like, it's just made me, I don't know, just really passionate about this topic. And there are just so many other things that I've done, like research and stuff that I've started that aren't even particularly for this assignment. But it just made me want to learn more. So thank you for listening. And yeah, have a wonderful day.